Nationwide.
Major Garrett was in the Bronx.
Just after 3 a.m., we were making our way to downtown Manhattan to begin briefings on ICE actions to come this morning. Inside the ICE field office in Manhattan, the ranks are enlarged by other agencies now ordered by the Trump administration to gear up for immigration sweeps. The plan? Multiple pre-dawn raids targeting undocumented immigrants with criminal records. The charges range from murder to theft to kidnapping.
We are going to take every precaution when we're trying to apprehend these folks.
Today, they are joined by newly confirmed Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem.
Be safe out there.
The goal? 500 arrests over a week-long operation in New York. In a Bronx parking lot, a final huddle.
Target today is Anderson Pacheco, Venezuelan national. He's wanted out of Colorado on multiple felony warrants.
A suspected gang member with warrants for kidnapping, burglary, and a gun crime, authorities told us. Around 5:30 a.m., heavily armed agents raid this apartment building and find the suspect and 3 other male associates, all handcuffed and without incident. Also there in the residence, 3 children, their immigration status unknown. And now a check to see if they have a caregiver or if Child Protective Services needs to be brought in. The next stop, a residence less than 2 miles away. After some negotiation, the officers make their way inside, but come up empty. The targets were not home. No arrests, no detentions. Federal law enforcement is working with limited help from New York City police because of the city's laws protecting undocumented immigrants. Some might say, isn't New York a sanctuary city? But you said the mayor's been cooperative?
The mayor's been fantastic. In fact, I talked to him on the phone probably 4 or 5 times last night. One of these individuals was so dangerous that we needed the backup of the NYPD to be there in case things went south.
Today's Bronx operation required around 36 law enforcement, yielding a handful of arrests. Is that a ratio you're comfortable with?
It is, absolutely. I won't doubt what they need for support and backup. Are you aware you're in violation of our laws?
You want cameras at these events, don't you? And some would say you want this spectacle to be filmed.
It's not a spectacle. This is our nation's law enforcement judicial process. The scales of justice are equally applied to everybody. We want transparency on this.
Vice President J.D. Vance has suggested deporting 1 million people a year could be possible, roughly quadruple the number under President Biden last fiscal year. Will you have the person power you need to carry out this initiative?
We're working on it.
It seems like you won't.
Well, we will have the personnel because we're going to continue to recruit and ask people to help us.
Major, as you mentioned in the piece, these are pictures the administration wants people to see, and they're not upset about that ratio you mentioned. So many forces for a little haul. Help people understand that.
They want to show a force. They want people to understand that there is a new tempo and range and scope to these immigration actions. Here's what we know about what happened today. It took roughly 90 officers to arrest 20 suspects in about a 4-hour period. 8 of them had no criminality associated with their existence in this country at all, only that they had entered illegally. 12 had criminal records. The administration says that's 12 people more inclined than not to commit crimes in the future. They're off the streets, and the country is safe.
Major, 9 days ago with Joe Biden in office, these raids had a whole different kind of feel. How would you compare the 2 approaches?
The 2 biggest differences are these, Maurice. We saw ATF, DEA, U.S. Marshals. They would not have been involved under the Biden administration. That allows a force multiplier effect. 2, collateral arrests. What are those? The 8 suspects arrested today who have no criminality associated with them, they would not have been swept up by the Biden administration. They are being swept up by the Trump administration.
So, Major, the number of arrests today, match that to what J.D. Vance said, which was that he basically wanted 1 million of such arrests in a year. That possible?
The numbers really help us understand whether it is, John. In the last 20 years, this country has never deported even 500,000 individuals in a single year. The highest number was 409,000 under President Obama in 2012. The highest Trump number, 2019, 267,000. To reach 1 million would require a vast expansion of federal immigration resources that are not currently available.
Really steep climb there. Major Garrett, thank you so much.
Thanks, Major. Now to some of the top stories from around the world in tonight's Evening News Roundup. The United Nations says that since yesterday, more than 376,000 Palestinians have returned to their homes in northern Gaza under the ceasefire deal.
Is it a mystery solved? The White House says most of the drones spotted over New Jersey recently were not the enemy. and had been cleared to fly by the FAA for research purposes.
The Senate holds a confirmation hearing tomorrow on Health Secretary nominee Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Today, his cousin, Caroline Kennedy, said his vaccine skepticism is disqualifying. In a letter to senators, she wrote, "Bobby is addicted to attention and power." Bobby preys on the desperation of parents of sick children.
And President Trump wants to freeze many federal grants and loans to make sure they comply with his agenda. It is not clear yet exactly what that might affect. And late today, a federal judge blocked the freeze.
It was ordered in a late-night memo from the Office of Management and Budget, and Nancy Cordes is at the White House. Nancy, this is confusing. So can we go first to who would not be affected by this order if it were in effect?
We are still trying to figure that out, John. The judge said today she's imposing this stay until at least Monday, so she has more time to determine whether organizations will be harmed by the funding freeze. Right now, no one seems to know how much funding is being paused, how many groups that affects, and for how long. But the White House did release a memo today to say that many vital programs will not be affected, like Social Security, Medicare, food stamps, Head Start, farm assistance, and rental assistance. As for the organizations that will be affected, well, all the White House has said so far is that this pause will apply to any programs that conflict with the president's new executive orders on topics like immigration, foreign aid, and DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion.
And so, Nancy, of those who think they might be affected, how are they reacting tonight?
Well, Democrats argue these funds were already approved by Congress and that the Trump administration doesn't have the authority to do this. Of the groups that might be affected, the way that they're reacting, well, in the absence of much information, thousands of organizations that rely on federal funds were making panicked calls to Congress today to try to figure out if they're on the list. Take LULAC, for example. It's the nation's largest Latino civil rights organization. They told us they believe one of their largest education programs is on the list to be frozen. And if that's true, they say they will not be able to make payroll for about 125 employees. So even a brief pause could have a significant effect.
Nancy Cordes for us at the White House. Thank you, Nancy.